Welcome back, everybody. We are back with another episode of Fantasy Football 201, an advice show on this channel for fantasy football for the 2021 season to help you win a championship. We are previewing every team this offseason, and now we are moving to the Pittsburgh Steelers, going alphabetically through every team. So if you want to check out any team listed alphabetically before Pittsburgh, I've got it on the channel so you can check it out in my channel listings in previous videos. Also, if you're interested in other content on my channel, please check the description box below. If you're interested in any of that stuff, please consider commenting, or subscribing. So, before we get into talking about the Steelers, I want to do a quick trivia question for Steelers fans. And for those of you watching this, if you answer this question correctly, then I will shout you out on this channel and answer one of your fantasy football questions in my next video. So, take advantage of this opportunity while you can. I only have 86 subscribers right now, so I definitely have the time to look at your question, answer it, and then mention you on the channel. So take advantage of that while you can. I want to use this as a way to help you in fantasy football, and so gonna do some mailbag questions later on in the season and all that too. So stay tuned for that. But the trivia question I have for the Steelers, so big focus on this team, Najee Harris, a running back drafted from Alabama. I will talk about him in more depth. He is the first running back taken by the Pittsburgh Steelers since 2008. So the trivia question is, who was the last running back the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted in the first round in 2008? Who was that player? He did play a pretty significant role for them in the Super Bowl. But if you can guess that individual below, then I will answer your fantasy football question on the channel. So, and if you stay tuned, I might just reveal the answer during the video if you just continue to watch. So just putting that out there too. Anyway, so we will now go to the Steelers and go through their schedule. So the takeaway I have with their schedule is that excellent opportunity to buy low after week one for the Steelers. A lot of times, people make quick judgments on players or teams based on how they perform the first week. Pittsburgh has a pretty tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills, which is a pretty good defense. But then they have a pretty good stretch against teams that either have bad defenses or shaky defenses. And a lot of this is because a lot of these are home games for the Steelers in which they have 4 out of the next 5 at home. They play the Las Vegas Raiders, which is a terrible defense. They play the Cincinnati Bengals, which is a terrible defense. And then they go to Green Bay. Green Bay's got some talented defensive players, but I think that Pittsburgh could have a lot of success in this game offensively just because they'll have to keep up with their offense. And then Denver, Seattle, in Pittsburgh, the next 2 games. I think these are 2 overrated defenses that are rated higher than they necessarily will perform, in my opinion. So very good stretch from week 2 to 6 to take advantage of the Steelers if you buy low on them after week 1. Schedule gets a little more difficult later on, but there's also a good stretch between week 10 to week 12. They play Detroit, Los Angeles Chargers, which is should be a good defense, but then they play the Bengals. So between Detroit and Cincinnati, that's a pretty good 3-week stretch there. Los Angeles, we'll see how they do. A lot of it depends on how healthy Joey Bosa is going to be. Playoffs are a little bit mediocre, up and down. So they play Tennessee, which is not a great defense last year. Proved a little bit this year, though. Kansas City in the next week of the playoffs, and then you've got Cleveland, Baltimore towards the end and to close the season. So not great end to the season, but at the beginning of the playoffs, could be some pretty good matchups for you. So now we'll move to the position players, and we'll start with Ben Roethlisberger. So Ben Roethlisberger last year, he was about mid-level, low draft pick to waiver wire pickup. He was the number 14 quarterback last year in terms of his overall performance. Obviously started out the season better than he ended it. Steelers ended the season a little bit rough last year with a lot of their offense stagnating. But Ben Roethlisberger is pretty much exactly that to me. He's a guy that really should not be drafted in fantasy football, but does have some good stream value from time to time because there's no doubt he is very talented. And even at his age, I think he will still have some games in which he's highly productive and will put up a lot of numbers. And with a guy like that, he's also a threat to run the ball in the end zone as well. He's obviously not as mobile as he was in his past, but I do think that if the Steelers have some opportunities around the goal line, Ben Roethlisberger could take advantage of that and could be decent value for you. This is a guy that I would not be trying to draft at all, as I said, but I think there are situations in which he could be a good stream candidate for you and could have some good value there. So just be careful with Roethlisberger if you're in deep leagues, because I think a lot of people will try to reach in the draft to try to take him because he's a big name that everybody knows. But in general, I would much rather, if you're in the draft situation, let's say this is, for instance, if you're in like a 14 to 16 team league or something to that effect, I would much rather take a flyer on one of these rookie quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, even if it looks like he's going to be the starter. Justin Herbert's going to be taken higher than the range that Big Ben would go. But just guys that I think are younger and have more ability to run the ball. Like I think Tua would be a good example of that. I'd much rather take a flyer on those type of players than Ben Roethlisberger. But I still think in the right situation, Ben could be a good quarterback for you from time to time. Other quarterbacks they have of note on this team, Mason Rudolph, who's been about as inconsistent as you can imagine, but he's at least doing better than Dwayne Haskins is, who's the third string quarterback right now. Haskins, I just hope he can get his life together at this point. He obviously, we all know about how the Washington football team career went for him. I'm a fan of Washington, so I very much suffered through that experience of having Dwayne Haskins as the quarterback. But it looks like he's getting into the same, not as bad as with Washington, but still similar kind of situations with his wife or his ex-wife. I'm not really sure the entire deal there, but it's not good for a guy like him. But now we will move to the running back position, and we start with Najee Harris. Najee Harris, first-round draft pick. He was the first running back taken since Rashard Mendenhall. Ding, ding, ding. That's your question. Comment that below if you stayed to watch this video. In 2008. So Najee Harris comes with a lot of expectations, and this team needs a running back to be effective on their team, and I think that this is the prime opportunity for Najee Harris to take advantage of this. So we take a look at his stats real quick from college. 251 attempts for 1,466 yards, averaged about 5.8 yards a carry with 26 touchdowns. So that's excellent numbers right there. That's the best running back performance that somebody has put up with Alabama since Derrick Henry. And I'm going to get into that in a sec, but he's also shown that he's productive as a receiver as well. He had 43 receptions across 13 games, so about 3 receptions a game, 425 yards, so that's about 9.8 yards a carry or per catch, and 4 touchdowns. So he's generating effectiveness as a PPR back as well. So this shows me that he's got the potential to be an every down back for this team, and he's possibly going to get a lot of volume because I think this will be a team that relies heavily on running the ball, having a strong defense, controlling the clock. That's how they're going to try to be successful, in my opinion. And this just sets up perfectly for Najee Harris to be an excellent running back on this team and the best running back, in my opinion, to break through this season. So the other thing that I like about him is that Alabama has a long history of producing great running backs. Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Josh Jacobs to a lesser degree. T.Y. Yeldon has had some success in the past. Trent Richardson didn't necessarily do as well. But they've been producing NFL quality running backs for a while. And another example is Alvin Kamara, who was actually, before he went to Tennessee, he was actually the third string running back on Alabama, and then he transferred because he wasn't getting playing time. So that just shows you how well that Nick Saban is setting up these running backs for success. And I think that Najee Harris, especially since he's one of the more standout running backs from Alabama over the last 10 years, it bodes very well for him to have a highly successful NFL career. The other thing that I like about Najee Harris, too, is that Pittsburgh, in general, their running back core last year very much relied on a committee, and the other players weren't consistently stepping up. They had inconsistent games from time to time, and couldn't really put anything together. So Najee Harris doesn't really have a ton of competition to really stand out against some of those other running backs. Guys like Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, the backups, they couldn't really put together a consistent stretch. So Najee Harris has a great opportunity there as well. The only concerns I have about him is that the Pittsburgh line has some turnover from last year. There's questions about will it be a good line. Marquise Pouncey retired. Villanueva went over to Baltimore, and then David DeCastro is unsigned free agent at this point. But I think a team like Pittsburgh, this is a smart organization that knows how to put offensive lines together and knows how to just build players with player development. Just look at the receivers that have developed over years. Antonio Brown, 6th-round pick. Juju was a relatively unknown receiver as well. Diontae Johnson. I'm going to get into these guys in a sec. Claypool. But Pittsburgh is very good at developing young talent, and I think that they will do this with the line. And I think Najee Harris is going to have a good season. I really like him as a 2nd-round target. I'm going to be targeting him a lot in my mock drafts. So I could go on about this for a while, but I'm really high on Najee Harris, as you can tell. Anyway, so we will now go to the handcuff running backs, and I'll talk more specifically about handcuffs as we get further along. I have a video that I'm going to devote specifically to that, but Benny Snell is the backup running back. He, as I said, was mildly productive at times for the Steelers. Wasn't necessarily great, but he did stand out last year as James Conner's backup. And he had some good games from time to time. So he's got experience should anything happen to Najee Harris. Anthony McFarland, another one who's been in the system for a little bit and has some experience. And then Jaylen Samuels, it looked like Samuels would have a chance to break through in 2019 because James Conner was dealing with injuries then, and Jaylen Samuels was the guy that everybody thought was going to step up as Conner's backup. But that never really happened, and now Samuels is 4th on the depth chart. So to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if he's even going to make the roster, but we'll have to see how that develops. Next, we move to the wide receiver core, and 3 guys of note that all have different perspectives in terms of how they will do are Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, and Diontae Johnson. All of them performed at relatively about the same value last year. Just to generally summarize all 3 players, Juju is the guy that everybody thought was going to... He had a very productive rookie and sophomore year with Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh, but it's kind of fallen off recently. Chase Claypool, a rookie wide receiver last year coming out of Notre Dame, who surprised everyone and ended up being one of the best receivers on the team. And Diontae Johnson, who's been around, this is his 2nd year, more of a PPR kind of guy who's consistently getting targets for the Steelers, but all have their different advantages at times. So personally, how I would rank these players, I would much rather have, in the following order, Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Diontae Johnson. I would go that order. Claypool, to me, is clearly the number 1 because Claypool represents the most potential to continue to improve, in my opinion. Claypool put together a pretty impressive rookie season, was excellent value last year because he was mostly undrafted. But Claypool has the physical attributes as a tall receiver with speed, great hands, really could continue to capitalize on that rookie season and have a great 2nd year. I would most likely think that he would be the one to improve, and I would much rather have him personally. Next, I would go with Juju because we've seen Juju Smith-Schuster at an elite level before, but he's just got to stay off TikTok or whatever, because I think that a lot of times this guy just doesn't. He just, for whatever reason, isn't focused. I don't really know how to describe it, but he's shown that he can be an elite receiver. The question is I guess, does he want to be an elite receiver? And if he's committed to, putting his focus back into the game and trying to be the elite receiver that he showed flashes of in his first 2 seasons, he's got a lot of potential to continue and improve. I think Diontae Johnson is the safest of the 3 in terms of you kind of know what you can get, especially if you're in a PPR league. He's going to get a lot of targets, but I don't think he represents the level of upside that Smith-Schuster and Claypool could represent. So that's why I rank him 3. But I think they're all decent options to have depending on where you are on the draft board and where you're selecting these players. But personally, I would rather have Claypool out of these 3. Other receivers of note, James Washington has had some good games from time to time, but I just simply don't think that he's going to get the volume in order to justify taking him that high or even really at all. He's kind of a stream candidate from time to time, but I don't really see him doing too much. Ray McCloud is the guy they brought over from Buffalo. Again, another guy that he could put up some games where he'll put up a lot of points. It's usually because he has 1 catch for 70 yards and a touchdown. But that's just not consistent enough to rely upon. So he's merely just a guy that the only reason you would pick him up is if you're trying to trade him for more consistent value, in my opinion. But yeah, so now we will move to the tight end position. Their tight end is Eric Ebron. Been around the league for a little while. He's always been a guy that's had some hype to, he's going to break through, but it's never really happened. He's kind of been, his career has definitely improved a lot over the last 3 seasons. He's bounced around a little bit of teams, but was decently productive with the Steelers last year. So he had 5 touchdowns, 558 yards, 56 catches. So he gives you moderate level production for the tight end position in terms of he's a decent stream candidate from time to time. He's probably going to be available in which he could take advantage of some matchups for you in streams. But personally, he's not really a guy I'm putting a lot of stock in. Of note, though, they did draft a 2nd-round tight end, Pat Freiermuth. I think that's how you say his name, out of Penn State. So in terms of, in these videos, I talk about potential versus modest gains. In terms of it's better to take guys with high potential over guys that are name value that generally aren't going to give you a lot of more than that. You kind of know what they are. They're just kind of a modest veteran that's not really going to help you win a championship. Freiermuth has potential to step up and be the lead tight end, or to really kind of take advantage of that situation. But I think Ebron at this level in his career is still good enough that I don't see Freiermuth significantly eating into the amount of targets that he would get. He's an interesting guy to keep an eye on waivers, but he's not a draft candidate at this time. We'll have to see how this develops over the first few weeks of the season and see what Ben's preferences are in terms of which receivers he's throwing to, if they're even using 2 tight ends at all. But yeah, we will now move to the defense. And this defense, another situation where it's going to be a defense that is taken relatively high on draft boards. So you really have to be careful if you're going to consider taking the Steelers defense that you're not reaching for them. I think the Steelers are attainable towards the end of the draft, in which it might be justifiable to take the defense higher than the second to last round, like I typically advocate for. And I think that this is especially going to be a very turnover-prone defense in which they could reap a lot of value for you. Just in my personal opinion, I think the Steelers' defense will be better than some of the defenses taken ahead of them, like the Chicago Bears or the Miami Dolphins, potentially. Things like that, or even the Denver Broncos, which people are taking very high. By the way, I don't understand this. This is a side rant, but I don't understand why people are saying the Denver Broncos they already have a championship core. They just need Aaron Rodgers. That's not been the case for 6 years. If that was the case, then why have they not made the playoffs since Peyton Manning retired? I don't understand that at all, personally. But that's side rant. I think the Steelers are better than the Broncos defense, is what I'm going to say. But yeah, just don't reach for the Steelers. But they could have some excellent value for you. Just be very careful that you're not taking them very high in the draft. And then Kickers on this team, Chris Boswell is their kicker. He's a very good value for you to get in that last round of the draft because the Steelers will be in a situation where their offense is good enough that they'll put Boswell in position to score. Maybe with their Big Ben's age, he might have some difficulty converting in the red zone, things like that. So there might be a situation where Boswell could get a lot of field goal opportunities and could give you good value in that last round. So he's another guy to keep an eye on too, in my opinion. But that's all I got on the Steelers. Let me know what you think of this video and comment the answer to the question, which hinted was Rashard Mendenhall, below, and then I will answer one of your fantasy football questions too. So thank you for watching, and up next we will do, I believe the Seattle Seahawks are the next alphabetical team. We'll do that tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.